Committee at 6:04 on Monday, October 9th. And we're continuing with our review of the budget. And I guess I will hand it off while I try to get back onto Teams. If there's anything that George or Rebecca would like to proceed with here.
Yep, we'll be starting where we left off on page 47 for clerk's budget.
So are you talking about the budget
Yeah.
document,
we'll be...
or a meeting packet?
The budget document.
So that looks to me like page 47, you said, George, that's clerk services?
You got it.
Thank you.
All right, if everyone's on page 47 for clerks, we'll start off with questions. Raise of hands.
I can't see hands, so Trustee Kudo, would you please take over the meeting until I can get onto Teams, please?
Sure.
Sorry.
I actually, no, I don't see any hands either. There's a question in the chat. Are we sharing the?
Yeah, I can pull mine up.
Thank you very much.
All right, can everyone see?
You may want to go full screen though, just FYI. Yeah, George, feel free to walk us through it. There are no currently pending questions, so.
Okay, so we'll keep going. Clerk's pretty straightforward. Only outliers here would be the bump in poll worker stipends. Everything else on the detail page would be straightforward as well. Only increases really is all related to the elections coming up this year. If we don't have any questions, we'll just move on over to the budget for finance department.
Trustees Arndorfer or Stokebrand, do you have any questions regarding the clerk's budget as put forth by Mr. Johnson?
I did not. My understanding was there were some increased costs due to more elections in 2024. Is that correct? Like
Yep.
Paying for poll workers?
Yes, that's right.
Great, thank you.
And I heard you, Trustee Arndorfer. So, okay, not seeing any questions and not seeing any questions online. We'll move on to the next department, the general fund finance department.
All right, finance. Any questions here? Anything you would like for me to touch on?
I didn't have anything. Thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer?
No, it looks pretty straightforward. Thank you.
I agree. Let's move on.
All right. Our next section, other general administration. Any questions about this section here? Any?
I just noticed on page 54, so the Microsoft, the Adobe license network service contract fee, Microsoft 365, is that part of our Teams subscription?
Yeah.
Teams is under that?
Yeah, we are provided Teams through our 365 service. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
Said yes, that's correct. We get our Teams access through our subscription to 365.
Okay. I have no further questions then. I don't know, I keep loading in every username, passcode. I don't know. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Police?
Yep. Next up will be PD, Police Department. Is there any questions?
I think we should go over, this might be a good time to go over, or would there be a better time to go over the Republican convention, the equipment things? Would you like to do that now or later?
I'd actually like to do that later, when we go through the memo for the meeting, because we kind of go down in a prioritized order, with remaining things related to the capital budget.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see it in the description or services or budget impact, so I guess we can go through that later. I was surprised in this department, health insurance was only 2.5% increase, whereas for the rest of the overall, I think we're seeing a 9.5%. Do they use a different contractor?
Do we know, George or Chief, if there's a different contractor for health insurance?
No, they use the health insurance that's provided by the village.
Yes,
So it says 2.5% change, and I thought we were looking, I mean, I know we go for averages here, but wow, that's really below the 9.5% that we've been told for the,
yeah, so the PD's calculation historically is done a little bit different. I just try to follow the path that Mark has set forth. And that's the number we came upon. That number did stick out to me as well, but we did review it compared to his worksheets, and he said everything should line up right.
so everything should line up right. What does that mean? The village-wide average is 9.5, this one is 2.5. What does that mean? Everything should line up just fine. I don't understand.
Based on the way he calculates their budget for PD staff, we are projected or estimated to be at that cost number rather than the percentage. He went with the number calculated. Some other departments, he historically used a percentage of increase. In PD, he recommended we do more of a different analytical formula to where we get a more exact number.
And who recommended that?
Mark.
Okay, all right. I'm looking then at page 57. I see things that just stuck out to me were other intergovernmental payments were down 20%. If you or the chief would care to comment, I see the credit card fees are up. So it's just my questions were about other governmental payments are down 20%, and also repairs and maintenance are down 20%.
One second.
Maintenance, it's very small. That's for the building, right? Because vehicle is down below it.
Trustee Stokbrand, can you, George, do you know where trustee is, or she's? Because I do not. Okay.
Catching up. So you're looking at
Seven of the budget.
page Yeah, page 57, you're looking at repairs and maintenance. What other column?
It would be item 53300.
That's
It's
the same
down,
column you're looking at, George.
Yep, so we just took an average over the past 3 years and just projected out that amount.
For the building, correct? Because vehicles below it.
Yes, that'd be correct.
Okay, and intergovernmental payments of, higher up on the page is account number ending in 52300 is down 20%.
Once again, just an average, estimated average.
And just for background, what would that be, intergovernmental payment? Are these sort of like the grants that we get?
I would have to pull that GL and get you a detail on that one.
Chief, do you want to comment?
I would have to pull the GL as well. I don't know off the top of my head what those are for.
Is that
Okay,
something
all
we
right,
can
I have,
get the trustee just emailed over, please?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Stokebrand, additional questions?
no, I don't. Thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, let's continue to move on.
Are we on planning?
We should be in a moment. There's Bart. George, is there anything that we should be taking a look at on planning and development before I open it up for questions? Anything that popped out to you or things you
No,
wanted to highlight? Okay. Trustee Arndorfer, any questions about planning and development?
I have none.
Trustee Stokebrand, any questions about planning and development?
No, thank you.
Let's keep going.
other public safety, any questions here?
Again, anything we should be looking at, anything that popped out to you, George, or that changed from previous year?
No outliers outside of the already discussed in prior meeting, increase in the crossing guard.
I do have a
Trust-
question.
Yep, Trustee Stokebrand.
Sorry. So I'm wondering, the North Shore Health Department, will they be moving out of our building in 2024?
They will.
And so that's a reduction in revenue there. Any ideas about that space and that revenue that we should know about?
There's no plans for it at this time, but you are correct in that it decreases revenue within that health department line item, which is also reflected in the budget. So that's one of the questions I think we'll have some more thoughtful discussion on, when we had a forecasted timeline that's more definitive, in terms of them vacating the space. We, definitely understand that anyone utilizing the space will incur an expense from the village for operating that side of the building. So we want to make sure that that's present within the discussion as we talk about future use.
And it seems to me that was about a $15,000 rent payment is all.
Correct. So what you'll see on the health department formula side in the detail is that you will see that we go down in terms of expense that we pay out, but it was also compensated for within the calculation, and the governmental agreement between the 7 communities.
So do we have an ETA on when they'll leave in 24?
They're hoping within the second quarter of the year, but it's all dependent on how construction goes of the station over the winter months.
Space for marketing and
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
What's the plan for marketing and filling that space and gaining revenue?
That's something that we will have an opportunity to talk about as a board.
Yeah,
Okay,
Trustee
so
Stockman,
staff
any
has-
other? I just want to make sure that we're staying on the budgeting as opposed to talking about future policy, which it sounds like we're going to be able to do as a board.
Yeah,
Not to cut
Okay.
you off. Sorry.
no further.
Okay. Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, just as it relates to lifeguards, so where are we in the contract at as we look to 2024? Is that the second? I'm just trying to recall.
Are you asking what year of the contract we're in?
Correct. What year the contract will be in come next year?
I don't know offhand the year of the contract with Ivy. However, I know
Okay.
that Chris has been in communication with her and she has expressed interest in continuing in 2024. So I know that they've been in communication. And if Chris is on the call, if you have any more details, Chris, you're welcome to weigh in.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I don't have any additional details at the moment. We did just wrap up the season for the summer, so I will be checking in with her probably about same time I did last year, so maybe about January, February timeframe, if not sooner, just so we know what's happening there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No further questions.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Johnson. Any outliers here, George? Oh, you're muted, sir. George, you're muted. You were just muted. Sorry.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, no outliers unless there's something Leanne, since we have her on the call, wants to say.
Nothing of particular note that's significantly different from previous years.
Okay. Any questions from Trustee Arndorfer?
None. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Stockburn? Oh, you're raising.
Yeah, I was, can you
Yep.
hear me? I have a
Yes.
question about, the item is under building maintenance. Department program supplies was up 87% from about 24,000 to 46,000. Just looking for some info.
Sure, that's the line item that, as it mentions, includes all of our department supplies. So that would be cleaning and paper products for all departments, general building maintenance, paint, locks, anything of that nature. It is up significantly. Our costs this year are up significantly. We've reviewed that, and I don't find anything of particular note other than this, general cost increases, inflation, that type of thing. But this number reflects where we are trending for 2023.
Okay, I didn't see that kind of an increase in any other department. So, but is this village-wide? This is village center?
Correct.
Or
This
they-
would be for maintenance of every village building. Yep.
So it would be fair to, I think Trustee Stockburn, maybe, it would be fair to say that this is a unique number because of paint, and these are specific supplies as opposed to supplies that would be used by other departments within the village.
It's a mix of both. So as I
Okay.
mentioned, all the cleaning and paper products for all departments are included in this line item. So your bath tissue, your hand towels for every building is included here. It also includes all maintenance supplies. So any type of painting, repair to trim, woodwork, furniture, kind of, you name it. If we need to do it to keep a building running or an office operating, it comes out of this line.
And one final question before I turn it back over to our illustrious chair. Same vendors, we haven't moved to a more expensive vendor or something. This is just sadly the cost of doing business.
Yeah, so you'll notice this year, and I believe this is different than previous years, we have outsourced repairs and services, and then we have program supplies. So anything that would be paid to a vendor, that would include pest control, fire sprinkler and suppression maintenance, elevator maintenance, any minor HVAC work, anything that's paid directly for a service comes out of the line above, which is outsourced repairs and services. So that's different than in previous years. So the department program supplies is in fact supplies, purchased widgets, we'll say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
I had one other question about this. I just wanted to be clear a little bit. We're going to get into Emerald Ash Borer, and I just wanted to point out to my colleagues, they probably noticed page 73, line item under forestry, Emerald Ash Borer treatment supplies. So we're spending about $25,000 treating the ash trees. And I believe we're just finishing up year 2 of a 3-year plan to take out $75,000 worth of emerald ash or ash trees. So I would say in 2023, we spent about $100,000 on ash trees, just for context. And we still have, if I'm not mistaken, just under 20% of our trees at the end of 23 will still be ash trees. So just for perspective there. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of those details, Leanne.
No, that is great context and certainly an interesting lens at which to look to the ash issue.
And I'm guessing this 25,000, that was part of the Davy recommendation that we went with, I believe in 2021.
Actually, it is not. We have been treating ash through injection via use of our staff since 2009 or earlier. So this is a continuation. The Davy recommendations did include continuation of the chemical treatment. They also included recommendations to be more aggressive on removals. So that would be that 3-year $75,000 commitment that you reference.
So keeping this at 25,000, is that per a Davy recommendation?
Not explicitly. They recommended that we continue our previous level of treatment until we get to a certain level of removals. And so this $25,000 keeps us at the continued treatment level of previous years.
And just do you happen to know about how many trees does that include? The 25,000, about how many of the, I think we have what, 1,100 left? How many?
My recollection is we treat approximately 800 trees. And we do that on a 3-year cycle. So
every year, maybe 200.
Well, every year, probably 275, 260.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I just had one more question when we got to page 75, under 53350 HVAC maintenance, it was 22,000. Is that for Village Center, which now is needing $250,000 in repairs or replacement?
I'm sorry, the copy I printed does not have page numbers. Could you give me a little context as to the section you're in?
It's under expenditure request detail, Department of Public Works. And it's things like carpet cleaning, elevator maintenance, Village Hall Center.
Sure. Okay.
And so that 22,000 is maintenance of the system, that much of which we need to replace. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. That 22,000 would cover small HVAC repairs village-wide. So it would
Oh.
be all buildings, not
Okay.
just the village center.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I did have a question then about recycling refuse. I was just noticing the disposal contract, disposal fees for us. It was 107,000 with a tipping fee. Whitefish Bay has a lot more. If I had the, I don't want to compare apples and oranges if that's what I'm doing, correct me, but Whitefish Bay disposal, I'm on 77 of the budget, page 77, upper left corner. So they pay 220,575 for refuse recycling, right? That's not.
Yep. So those are based on actual tipping. So I've historically used a 5-year rolling average for materials deposited through the transfer station. So generally speaking, the tonnage that we collect and dispose of a year and that Whitefish Bay collects and disposes of in any given year really doesn't vary that significantly. So what that reflects is our estimate of their total tonnage based on that 5-year rolling average times the per ton disposal cost.
And so why is their rate different than ours?
So actually what that shows, so if you look at the first line, disposal fees, 2,800 ton at 38.90, that is the actual disposal fee. There is also a tipping fee of an additional $13 a ton. That is a state tax that is paid directly to the state by Waste Management once we pay that bill. So you'll see if you add the two of those, you get $51.90,
Right.
which instead of listing Whitefish Bays out separately, I just listed that one singly. I think sometimes it's interesting just to call everyone's attention to the fact that, you know, a significant portion of the tipping fees that we pay to get rid of garbage actually are tax.
But based upon weight, it would appear that Whitefish Bay has a significantly larger amount
Yes, that is correct.
than we do.
Yep, they collect and dispose of significantly more garbage than we do. There's likely a couple reasons for that. I think the largest one is Whitefish Bay is comprised predominantly of 1- and 2-family households, where Shorewood we're about half. We only collect garbage from 3 families and less. So we don't actually perform refuse collection services for approximately half of our population. Where
Okay.
Whitefish Bay, that's significantly different.
That's, yeah, interesting point about usage. Okay, thank you very much. I guess the other thing I thought was interesting was under forestry, the next page, 78. We spend almost as much on topsoil and seed as we do on trees. But that's what it is.
Topsoil is ridiculously expensive, as is lawn seed. Yes, it's crazy.
I have no further questions for Public Works.
And there's no, I'm just wondering, there's no opportunity to use compost or, I mean, there's a lot of us that, this is just off the top of my head, so I apologize, but there's a ton of us that use the composting service in the village. Is there a way to use our own refuse, our own compost, or buy it back from them at a bulk rate, or because right now I'm paying for compost.
Yep.
And then they allow me to pay again should I want to buy a bag of my compost. So I'm trying to think if there's a way to.
I would have to verify. It's been some time since I checked. Typically, the purchase of compost is significantly more expensive than the purchase of topsoil, even though compost is a fairly large component of topsoil. I can certainly look into that, but based on what I've seen and what I believe I know at this point, I don't think that would actually end up being a cost savings for us.
Okay. I just wonder.
Yep.
Since we're
No.
participating in the program, maybe we could get some benefits
You know, we've kind of thought that
Beyond.
too, but that doesn't really appear to be the case.
Okay.
I
If
don't
you
see
if
any-
you get a chance, if you could check into it,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love. Okay, thank you.
I don't see any increase or decrease in your subsidy, Eric. So that's good.
We're composting, we're doing our thing, so just want the village to get it back.
Yeah. Okay, anything else, trustee Arndorfer, or is there anyone else? I don't see who's all on, sorry.
No further questions.
Move on to library. I guess the only thing we don't really deal with the library budget. I just wanted to point out that they do use Zoom. And I was just wondering if we could get a group deal on Zoom. Page 87, they pay $175. And I know we're going to talk about that later, I believe, with part of Rebecca's report. So I was just pointing that out. Anything else, or should we move to the Senior Resource Center?
I have no questions on the library.
Trustee Arndorfer?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and then the Senior Resource Center, anything, Director Johnson, that we should know about?
No updates since last week, if there's no questions.
I did just notice that the first item on the budget impact was the Senior Resource Center expenditures increased by 10% in 2024. That could be explained by the salary increase and the health insurance. Is that correct? A large
Yes.
part of that.
Yes, large part, yes.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions then on that. I don't see any hands. Moving on to Shorewood today. I have no questions. Anyone have a question or comment?
No
Director
questions.
John, anything you wanted to add? I guess I would just clarify, we are, is there just a quick update about a contractor, a vendor? We're looking for one, but we're going to stay in the same price range. Is that correct?
Hi, Trustee Stokbrand. Sorry, I was getting my camera turned on. Thanks for the question. Yes, I have received feedback from our responsive vendors and some responses back to the stakeholders so they're aware. This is slated to be, the service agreement is slated to be on the agenda for the 16th, so next week.
Okay. And I guess I just would like to know, did the bids come in accordance with the 2024 budget numbers?
What we did have were placeholders, and I'm trying to get us a little bit closer to that. It's of course, with any new contract coming in, inflation is what it is, so they're a little bit higher. I'm hoping we can get closer to what we have reflected in the budget numbers, though.
Okay, and we are locked already into a multi-year printing contract, though, is that correct?
The printing contract is taken with the Fox Company annually. I need to look back at the, so they're more comfortable just renewing that with us annually so that we can get the most accurate numbers, given their line of business is somewhat volatile at times.
Okay, thank you.
So I anticipate bringing that at the end of the year for the contract to start in January 2024.
Okay, with an eye on these budget numbers, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready then for Director Johnson, the all-important debt service fund?
Yeah, service fund, we touched on it last week. Is there any new questions or any new reads?
When I was going through the list, the overview list of bonds, about halfway down the page on 99, I noticed bonds that were maturity, their general purpose corporate 2013 issue, maturity date of 2022. And so those are off of our books. Is that correct?
I would have to verify.
I think I did see on page, 102, about a third of the way down, current 2024 position, they were off. off the books. But there was another 2022 issue farther down that is still on the books. And I guess I was confused why that would be so. It was a 2015A issue. Again, on page 102, right about halfway down, Geo corporate purpose bonds, TID 3 and 5. Yeah, another page down. Let's see, in the narrative. Yeah, it's about $8 million callable in 2022. 2015A. Under the name of the debt.
I can
So if
verify. I can verify that when I send you an update, but I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And wow, those interest rates, love those. We only have 2 of them at 4% or more. Those were the days. And then I just, for my information, because I don't understand this completely, the sewer revenue bonds are separate. There's 2 of them at the end. After the TIDs. And those are on page 104. That is just for accountants, actuaries, and finance people. They just put those separately like that.
The separation is to distinguish the fact that they're revenue bonds as opposed to general obligation bonds.
Oh, okay, so those are the only revenue bonds we have. Okay. Okay, thank you. I had nothing further on the debt, just the question about the 2015A Geo bond.
And I'll get you an update on that one.
Thank you. Are we ready then for capital projects? 400?
Yes,
Actually,
we
can
are.
we
Well-
finish? Can we finish with utilities because the capital projects comes into play with the memo? So if we ended with that, that would be preferred. We could skip to the parking utility.
Can you give me a page?
It'd be around 129.
Got it. Thank you.
I have no questions on this portion.
I have no questions.
Same.
Okay, is that for parking, water, and sewer, or were you just speaking of parking?
I'm looking quickly.
Yeah, no worries.
No, I had no questions on parking, sewer, or water utilities.
Can I ask you a question about vehicle equipment? Just vehicles
Yep.
and equipment underwater, please.
Can you give me
Assuming
a
it's a
page?
new. Oh,
Underwater.
141. Yep, 141. It's literally almost the end. I'm assuming we're purchasing, if I remember correctly, we're purchasing a vehicle. It's a 377% increase.
I would assume there's equipment purchase, but I'll have to verify that one.
Can you give me account number, please? Just the last like 5 digits.
56130.
So that's in vehicles and equipment, and we are purchasing a valve turner back trailer. for 90,500, and then we have other small equipment at 5,000.
I like how you said that as though I'm supposed to know what that valve turner. I don't know what that. Thank you. Oh, okay. So valve turner totally
Yeah.
makes sense now.
So
All
do you
right,
hitch
great.
that up? Hitch that up to a pickup?
Yeah,
You know
would-
what? I'm gonna let
Yes.
Leanne describe
Yep.
it, only because
Yep.
I'm sure I'm not gonna do it in a way that she'd like.
Yeah, so it's good practice to exercise, part of a maintenance program, to exercise your water valves on a regular basis. And so the valve turner is in fact a trailered unit. It would hitch to a pickup truck or any other truck. And then it would it would actually provide the power to make those turns and then turn them back. There's a couple of benefits to that. It's more efficient. It's easier on bodies, so we have less workplace injuries. It also can record and maintain a record of the number of valves, turns that are required to open and close the valve into various positions. And it does that automatically, which is a real nice thing when you're in the field and you don't have to try and remember that, or you're search for a piece of paper. So it is, you know, we're trying to catch up into 20th century technology with this.
And so that's not part of the capital budget?
It's water capital,
Yeah, it's
not
a
general
separate energy.
capital.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you said there was something else under a vehicle there?
They just said that it was some general
Yeah,
updates
that's-
and
That's just the title of the line item that's used on the general chart of accounts.
Okay, thank you. Any other
Rebecca, I
questions?
think you would have described that just fine.
Well, I mean, Leanne gave you a very good description, but it's actually, it's one of the highest incidents for work comp rates. So a lot of people have transitioned to these turners. In addition, while it sounds really simple, we're responsible for tracking that and how those valves are maintained, because it can indicate other things from a PSC reporting standpoint. So it sounds really simple, but those details, like Leanne said, they really they have a big operational impact for us. So.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Anyone else? Then I believe we'll go back to 400, which is the General Capital Projects Fund.
So to start off this next part, what I'd like to do is actually follow the budget wrap-up memo. We'll be focused a lot on the capital budget, but I want to step in line with the numbers as they're listed, so we can kind of lean into the direction for how we want to proceed with the 2024 budget. One thing I want to note to you is that this draft budget reflects a 0.95% increase in 2024. However, you'll notice within the memo that I recommend that you consider capital funding that reflects an increase closer to 2% or an additional 130,000, if you so choose. One thing that we've just noted with the public works budget is that maintenance is a huge factor, not only this year, but we forecast for the next few years moving forward. While the vehicle maintenance has increased significantly, we are also challenged with supply chain constraints. So we may order a truck that we may ordered and have ordered in 2023 may not actually come due to delivery in 2025.
I have one question related to the valve turner where it was just described for 90,000. I mean, when I think about these costs for the equipment, and keeping in mind that we did a lot of public works. The first things we bought with our ARPA funding were the new street sweeper, so we didn't have to share with Whitefish Bay, $270,000, and then we bought 2 leaf vacs for $439 total, so that we wouldn't have to hire part-timers to help with that. so we save on hiring. And it's also, it was better, you know, I think it was just physically stressful, that part of it, running the vacuum. And so when I look at this valve turner, I'm thinking, if that's part of maintenance, is that something we could share like a street sweeper? Could we offer to share that with Whitefish Bay to keep some of these costs down? When I look at these equipment costs coming up here, you know, we need things for snow removal. Leaves are rarely an emergency. I'm just looking for some collaboration and cooperation here for these extraordinarily high equipment costs.
Trustee Stokbrand, would you mind if we parked that question for a moment? I just want to try to get into the first number one, and I'm sure Director Bushlick would be able to provide comment on that either at the end of the meeting or in follow-up.
Sure, we can park that.
Thank you. So as we look at the budget, there's a number of large items that were scheduled for this year. One being to Trustee Stokbrand's point, a plow truck in the amount of $250,000. No one had anticipated the necessary repairs to the AC in the village center. And so we had prioritized that because it's an operational impact with the scope of the building and usability. One of the things that we have also done with this budget is put forth only those items which are of greatest need. An example would be right now in blue or purple highlight, there could have been of highest need $750,000 of equipment for replacement. In total, all departments submitted a combined total of 1.2 million. I take a look at those and then put services in perspective based on greatest need department-wide. And those are the ones that you see reflected in purple. For purposes of tonight, wanted to get some direction from the Budget and Finance Committee regarding specifically the Village Center air conditioning improvements. Two options for this item: one, funding it within the scope of the capital budget, or two, funding it with a general obligation note or borrowing for that expense in 2024. Wanted to get the flavor of the Budget and Finance Committee, how you'd like to proceed. From there, we would then make our way down to what other expenditures, if any, you would recommend the village board make with regards to the capital budget.
Okay, so I'll kick it off a little bit here. You know, in going through the bond issues, the debt list, I saw there was a note for refuse trucks in 2017 or 2019. And so obviously the village is, you know, it's a 10-year note. I mean, I feel off the top of my head, my first inclination is, why would we not make cuts so that we can, or find a way to fund an air conditioner instead of, you know, putting that down the road for a future debt obligation. That doesn't seem like being really fiscally prudent to me. They apparently did it. I don't know where the note is, but they did it for refuse vehicles in 2017. It was about $1 million. And now we're still paying off that debt. So it would be my preference to find ways to keep the tax levy increase as low as possible through other cuts, and to fund this HVAC issue for Village Center through the 2024 capital budget. Anyone else? Trustee Kudo or Trustee Arndorfer? Your thoughts? I mean, the problem right now for me is interest rates are so high. I don't know. George, can you tell me? I mean, I saw some of these interest rates from 2023 were 4%. If we go out for a note on this, how would this work? Walk me through this. We decide we want to get a note for $250,000. What kind of rate are we looking at for 10 years?
I couldn't with confidence quote you a rate without getting an up-to-date quote. Rates are changing day by day, week by week. I wouldn't want to spit a figure out there and be off.
Sure, understood. Trustee Kudo or trustee
I
Argo?
mean, yeah, I mean, generally, I'm with you. I'd rather find a place to cut or reduce or hold off than to go out, try to borrow more money. I'm not incredibly comfortable with our debt service as it is. And frankly, it's like one step forward of trying to make sure we're more affordable and two steps back of spending more money. And so, it's at some point we're going to have to make some decisions here as to whether or not we're just going to keep spending more or trying to borrow more, or if we're just going to tighten the belt even further if possible. Can't do both. So, I would be interested in see what the rates are, get a little bit more information moving forward. I mean, I understand there are costs of running a municipality, right? That's the nature of the beast, and there are increased costs and supply increases and what have you. But we can't afford everything. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I'm comfortable looking to fund it out of the capital budget.
Trustee Stokbrand?
Thank you. I'm sorry, trustee Arndorfer, then you would prefer that putting it in the capital instead of borrowing?
Yes.
Okay,
I don't have, I mean, I could be swayed, but that's generally where it's my initial reaction.
so I know we're past the air conditioning season, so can we wrap this up at our next meeting? Or I guess if we can get, it sounds like most of us would prefer not to do additional borrowing for this, but there was a query about what the interest rate might be. And so I think it'd be fair to get that number and we can come back to that on the 15th, if that sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think if the majority of this group was in favor of keeping it in the capital budget, we would bring it back within the scope of the capital budget. And should members of the board desire to change that, they would have an availability to have us move forward with something else. One thing that I just wanted to provide some education on is that you would use kind of like the example of the refuse trucks that were purchased in 2017. Typically, a municipality is not going to be able to take on over $1 million in capital expenditure because you'll be capped by levy limits, but also the expenditure restraint program. So strategically, from a finance perspective, you will make those decisions to borrow on a note or over 10 years because the people receiving those services over the scope of 10 years will continue to pay for that over time, but more so because you wouldn't be able to accommodate for it while meeting all the state formula regulations. So that's really, in this case, we would be inserting the HVAC or the AC improvements and deferring a plow vehicle for an extra year. So you'll have that plow vehicle come back and stand in position for funding next year. And then, you'll just continue to push back the timeline for replacement of other vehicles. I just wanted to kind of explain how that works because I didn't want there to be any misunderstanding about the fact that while we may not want to take on an amount, some of it will not be able to logistically fit within the regulations we're required to adhere to from a state budgeting perspective.
Okay, so just to clarify, if the committee decides to put it in capital, which it sounds like we have a general agreement about that, then we would take out the 59 lead plow salt truck.
Correct, right?
Did you have something more you wanted to say, Manager Ewald?
No.
Okay.
And so I guess my other question would be, the number 88 trackless sidewalk machine and the salt shed. Because I guess, you know, my questions about the salt storage shed are, if we're going to move anyway, I can't remember in our discussion about this last week or 2 weeks, last week. This is a building that if we move in 5 years or 3 years, I can't remember, would this building be movable? Or would this be, because I guess, you know, if I think the storage shed was 200 and the number 88 sidewalk machine is 150. Like, do we get a choice between those two and the lead plow truck?
So one thing I want to, in the packet, we put together an updated capital sheet that identifies a column of those items funded with tax levy. And then other items that are identified in purple that are projects that have not been funded through the budget. So to address your specific question, the MT Winter Sidewalk Machine is funded and proposed within the scope of the budget that you were provided. And that is what I am recommending we move forward with. In second position to that, from the Public Works vehicle standpoint, we have Truck 59, which is not funded. Should you had provided the direction that we borrow for the HVAC, or pardon me, the AC unit at the Village Center, that would be second in position for my recommendation for funding.
And so I'm sorry, I'm going back to try to find the document. So the salt storage shed is included?
It is not included as being
Okay.
funded with tax levy.
Okay. All right, so I can support that. Is there any other further discussion among the committee? We would move forward with putting the
You didn't get kicked off. That's what happened.
okay, it says can I sign in again? Okay, so my understanding is then that we would support as a committee, we would support moving the HVAC for Village Center to the capital budget. We would go ahead with the sidewalk machine and we would defer the salt shed and the lead plow salt truck. Is that correct? Trustee Arndorfer or Trustee Kudo?
I'm comfortable with that.
Questions?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further direction that you need, staff, then from us on that item?
Not on this item. We can move to number 2.
Thank you.
These are 2 items that were missed within the scope of the capital budget that were brought to our attention at the last meeting. Both have been previously approved by the board. One is for Milwaukee County Safe Streets for All program in the amount of $5,000. The second is for the demonstration grant, which we qualify to apply for. We have applied, the board has approved that application, but we will not know if we've received this grant opportunity until Q1 of 2024. It requires a 20% match or $10,000 in terms of funding. And this again would be to try temporary traffic circles, curb extensions, and speed tables within the roadway locations that have been identified by our current PED plan for bike boulevard areas. I believe it's Murray and the second is escaping me, my apologies, but if Bart's in the line, I'm sure he can clarify.
I think Kensington is one.
Correct. Yep.
So for this, just want to verify that they're going to be included within the capital plan as previously approved by the board.
Going back here, I'm just concerned that, you know, one of the places we talk about curb extensions the most, especially if the state doesn't allow us to reduce the number of pedestrian crossings between Oakland and Morris, I think there would be a lot of interest in curb extensions at the places where there are where there are so many pedestrian crossings. And I just want to make sure that we're trying every angle we can to find funding for those if we can get approval. I know they have them on Lake Drive in the city of Milwaukee, and I know they have them on Capitol Drive in the city of Milwaukee. So curb extensions, is there a reason we are not mentioning Capitol Drive here? And I apologize if you've already explained this, Director Griepentrag.
Sure. Yeah. The grant was submitted with those streets because those streets are currently identified within a village plan. The bike ped plan has both Murray and Kensington in line as bike boulevards. And so the program that we submitted a grant for asked us to identify areas without having any other community consensus on which areas to submit for. We submitted for an area that was previously identified. And once again, those areas were Murray and Kensington. And so that's just, we had a very short time to submit the grant and put it together. Milwaukee County gave it to us and we looked at what we had on file. Those are the two streets that we had on file for those types of improvements.
So, I mean, I know that I believe, was that June then that we got that?
Correct, end of June.
And so the request was issued in July. So I guess it's just really unfortunate timing. But I would like to know, and then I'll have President McCaig weigh in here. We sent the project to Strand, the work order, and I just want to make sure that they're looking for state approval for curb extensions on Capitol Drive. So that's not lost here. We lost out here because of county timing, apparently, and that's extremely unfortunate. I just want to make sure that the thing that's been forwarded to Strand includes curb extensions on Capitol Drive, west of Oakland Avenue.
That is included in their work order. That I received actually approval on the scope from WSDOT today. So that work order will come to you at your meeting next week, Monday, for approval.
Okay, thank you. And President McCaig?
Thank you, Trustee Stokebrand. I just wanted to, I just wanted to voice my support for keeping these two items in the budget, as they are responsive to our overall commitment to moving forward as a village in terms of inclusive forms of transportation, as it were. And so I support them and think it's a reasonable cost. Thank you.
Thank you. And then my question is, so how soon could we see a return on the investment here, Bart?
With respect to which project?
Putting something in the street that might make pedestrians safer.
Sure. So if we receive the grant in Q1 of next year, I'd anticipate that we would have the installation completed. So this is, once again, it's a demonstration grant. So we'll have to do a test before, during, and after so that we can prove that these things are working. So these aren't meant to be permanent at this point. They're meant to be demonstrations. So if we get the grant in Q1, I would hope that we could do some pre-testing and engineering to get them installed late spring, summer, to test them out through that season. And then once again, we would take them out because they're demonstrations so that we could understand whether or not they performed. And so, yes, I would anticipate within the first half of next year, depending on grant receipt.
Thank you. And so then what's the time period for the trial? Is it like a full calendar year? Would you want to go through seasons, school years? How long is the trial period for the demonstration?
I don't have an answer on that. I don't believe it's defined.
Okay.
And so we technically probably could keep it up for whatever duration we want. But once again, if we find out that the neighborhood doesn't like it or that it's not working with, transportation patterns, I think we would probably be responsive to those kind of concerns.
Okay. And I was just wondering, so this pays, so we put the 5,000 for a local commitment, then we commit to the 10,000 for the 20%. And then are we all in for the construction costs, or could we potentially owe more later?
So the 5,000 is for the planning grant, so that's not related to the demonstration activities. The 10,000 of the demonstration activities is a 20% match. And so that is intended to include full costs of monitoring, installation, materials, everything. So that 10% is 20% of the 50,000 request that the village put in conjunction with other municipalities in the county. I don't know what the full total that they asked for, but we put in for 50,000 of their complete request, 10,000 of which would be local match.
Okay, thank you. I can support this also. Is there any other comment from anyone on the committee or anyone else on the call tonight? Let me know if I don't see hands, so.
I'm good. I also don't see any hands.
And do I have just a consensus vote of support then for item 2 here? Trustee Kudo
Yes.
and Trustee Arndorfer, please. Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 3 then, if you're ready, staff.
I am. Number 3 is EAB tree removal. As you previously referenced, Trustee Storbrand, right now the budget reflects that this item is unfunded. Total amount is 75,000. This would have been the third year of a 3-year plan for EAB removal within our community. Tangential to that is the fact that at the last meeting, we had some discussion relative to Lake Drive and EAB removal. Staff did confirm that WISDOT will not be removing any trees from their planning process on Lake Drive. If there is to be any tree removal consistent with our currently approved EAB plan, which calls for these trees to be removed prior to construction, that removal, or approximately 21 trees, in addition to others in the village, but for purposes of Lake Drive, 21 trees, would need to be reviewed in 2024 before WISDOT mobilized for Lake Drive reconstruction in 2026. Or pardon me, 2025. So if you do choose to fund EAB removal within the scope of the capital budget, please know that we will be coming back to the village board and inquiring as to whether you would like to proceed with our current policy, which is to remove EAB trees prior to constructions on roadway projects, or whether you would prefer to not remove those trees and then deal with their removal as needed in conjunction with all other removals in the village.
Leanne, could I ask if we took out the 21 ash in 2024 prior to before the Lake Drive reconstruction, about what percentage of trees is that on Lake Drive in that project? Is it going to be glaring?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that. If you give me 30 seconds, I might be able to find an email.
I just wonder, I've had a lot of citizen comments on the ash removal. People who have a big healthy ash in front of their house who want it removed and are told that it's not on schedule yet to be taken out, and some others who have a big beautiful ash in their parkway and they want it to stay and it has to come out because it's on the schedule. And I have respect for the process that we went through. You know, we hired Davey and as a consultant to come up with this aggressive treatment plan. I'm personally ready to hit pause a little bit. You know, I guess I'm thinking in 2024, if part of the 75,000, if we decide to continue with that, I believe it'd be the last year of that plan, that program. What about making sure that the Lake Drive trees are part of that? Just because, I mean, don't you say it's cheaper then, right, to remove those trees, Director Bootsleek, if you do it as part of a road construction?
But as Manager Ewald mentioned, we cannot do it as part of the road construction. WISDOT will not allow it.
Even if we pay for it?
Correct. It cannot be included as part of their contract. because they pledged no tree removals as a part of the
Oh.
project.
Okay, so it's off the table.
It's off the table as a part of that project. If the board wishes to apply the 2014 policy that was adopted regarding removal of trees in conjunction with construction projects, that would result in the removal of 21 trees that would have to be completed next year. Because it would be most prudent to do it prior to the project, not after. And as such, it would need to be funded in the 24 budget.
And of the 75,000, how much of that budget would taking out those 21 trees take?
It's hard to say without exact information from contractors, but based on the last 2 years of removals, I would estimate that you're probably in the 25 to $35,000 range.
22 to 35,000. So it
Somewhere
could be
in
like
there.
it could be like a
It
third.
really, yeah, it's all based on diameter inch.
Sure.
All the costs are based on the size of the tree. So I'm giving you a pretty big window because I haven't looked closely enough at the list to tell you, the majority of them are under 15 inches or, half of them are over 25. It's entirely dependent on their size.
And so then Lake Drive would be done with ash.
If that was the board's direction.
And so in terms of staff and the forestry department and looking at the village holistically, what would staff recommend about this? Would you recommend that we use a half to a third of the budget if we decide to continue to fund it in 2024 to take out those on Lake Drive? Or would you recommend we just do whatever the plan I'm sure you've got a 3-year plan already in place.
I don't actually have, I have a proper forestry practices recommendation, and I have a practical community response recommendation, and they're different, to be perfectly frank. The community was pretty loud and fairly explicit in their desire not to remove trees on Lake Drive. So from a community standpoint, I would pass on providing a recommendation and say that is a policy decision that should come from the board. From a purely forestry practices standpoint, everything we hear from forestry experts nationwide is removal of ash as aggressively and as quickly as possible. So from that standpoint, I would say, in keeping with those national best practices, we should be looking at removal of ash whenever we have the opportunity.
And just to be clear, there's a lot of pretty ash trees in my neighborhood. They seem to be fine. We're treating some of them. What's the downside to slowing down the aggressive path that we've chosen?
So all indications are that you cannot indefinitely chemically inject an ash tree. Trees have a finite life like anything else. You are on a regular basis inserting and creating more wounds in the trunk or the skin of that tree. That's detrimental to the tree's long-term health, which is ironic because you're doing it to try to save the tree. But that is, I completely lost my train of thought.
But wouldn't it be fair to say that if we keep them, it also
as a general
adversely
rule,
affects everything else, right?
It does.
Providing
removing
resources.
a healthy tree is significantly easier, cheaper, and safer than removing a tree that is in decline or is dead. It gets very expensive, very dangerous to remove trees, particularly in urban areas such as ours, when they're allowed to die naturally and completely. We try very hard to get out in front of those when we see a tree in signs of decline. We typically don't wait if we can help it, certainly not more than an additional year. The entire reason for developing a treatment program was to be able to get out in front of and manage that bubble of trees that would be dying. If we did nothing, we would have just a huge crashing wave of dead trees. A forestry staff of 3 would never be able to keep up with that. That is why we will typically see best management practices recommend being aggressive on and proactive on the removals.
Okay, so I guess then I would support keeping the $75,000 in the budget for ash removal. I'm on the fence about whether to target Lake Drive, given the public sentiment about could we maybe compromise and say let's take out half of them? Should we try to take out 10 in 2024? Target of the 75,000, target, make sure at least 10 are from Lake Drive. I'm just looking for some common ground here.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I mean, I get the sentiment. I get that they're beautiful trees and folks want to keep them. This is a program that has thus far, I think, been working for us the way that it's currently being implemented. Because folks on Lake Drive love the trees, I don't know that we're still going to take down the same number of trees. It just won't be Lake Drive trees, right? So, to say that someone loving an ash tree because it's beautiful in their neighborhood, that the Lake Drive trees are any more important, which is I know not what you're saying, but it's a tree is a tree, and if they have to get taken out, it's unfortunate, but the Lake Drive ash trees aren't any better or more important than the other ash trees throughout the village, who I'm sure villagers love as well. So I say my position would be we stick with the program as is, even though I know it's going to upset some folks, but it's just a bad situation, right? And we're trying to do the best we can with the bad situation, would be my position.
Right. And I guess the question is, my understanding was we don't know for sure with the regular plan how many Lake Drive ash would come out anyway in 2024. Should we try to target them just because that road's going to be torn up?
We do have a number, so there would be 21 trees. As I mentioned, if the 2014 policy were applied, it would result in the removal of 21 trees on Lake Drive.
In 2024.
Or whenever you would choose to do it, yes. Yep.
Do we know how many ash trees are
what
on
part
Lake
of the
Drive?
canopy is that?
I'm sorry?
What part of the canopy are there, like 70? I thought someone told me there were like 250 trees on Lake Drive when they were trying to do the Save the Trees thing. I thought it was over 200.
I can verify that for you tomorrow. I don't have that number right now.
And so 21 would be 10% perhaps.
Well, can we just wait till Leanne lets us know? I mean, we're just guessing, right? Like, I don't want to destroy the entire canopy. I totally understand that. But if there are 200 trees or 250 trees, I mean, let's get the information if we can, and then make a decision from there.
At the next meeting, perhaps then when we wrap up.
Yeah, I would be supportive of proceeding with the plan based on the facts as laid out. I wouldn't see any reason for delay in terms of trying to take them out just in line with the construction and not having to do the work over. Rather post-construction, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So staff, do you have what you need for direction then?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you. And then are we moving on to number 4?
Yes. Number 4 is the ballistic helmets and crowd control gear. Given the fact that we don't know if it will be funded or not, we're recommending that the balance of the equipment less the 12,800 from the grant remaining be used to fund those particular items and that they may be removed from the capital budget. Any objection?
Just
I'm
a
sorry.
slight, just
Go
a
ahead.
slight correction on that. So I sent some updated numbers in an email based on our calculations of the remaining grant funds. It's about $10,200 of remaining grant funds. And to your question from last week, Trustee Kudo, there isn't a way for us to contact the Department of Administration to get a pre-approval. So we just, we basically take our chance with submission. Although it specifically states in here officer equipment, and then under subline of that, it says uniforms, duty belts, so on and so forth, and other protective gear. So we're making the assumption that it would qualify under the grant as it reads.
Okay.
And that information, Chief Worth, was included in the memo.
That's, I mean, that, to me, that sounds perfectly fine. My position remains the same, that regardless of whether it's, I mean, hopefully it's covered. If it's not, we still have an obligation to cover our officers. So, you know, that's where I come down.
And so then to clarify, Director Ewald, Manager Ewald, you wanted to take it out of capital and it would be covered mostly by the grant and use the rest would be funded through ARPA?
Correct.
Okay, and will we have an updated ARPA funding list on the 15th?
Yes, on the 16th.
Great. I will support that.
Then
Sound
moving
like-
on. Oh, moving on to number 5, Zoom.
Trustee Arndorfer, did you have any comments?
Oh,
Aligned.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Manager Ewald.
next up, we have Zoom. I provided some information within the memo regarding that. As Trustee Stokebrand noted earlier this evening, we currently pay $25,000 in subscriptions for Office 365. Teams is a platform that is included with each individual with an Office 365 account. Since we knew that we were going to be moving forward in perpetuity utilizing Office 365 and that we didn't have to pay additional funds for utilizing Teams, that's when we have made the strategic decision to move to Teams and to learn that system. There was the request at the last meeting to come back and review the cost for Zoom. Zoom Pro is $150 a year for up to 100 participants with a minimum of 2 users. So it would be a total of 300. Because we would need 2 accounts. Unlike Teams, you can't run 2 consecutive meetings on the same account. So sometimes, you know, how we have JP&L and community and business relations at the same time, we can't dovetail on the same system. So we need to, at a minimum, irregardless, just to be able to accommodate our meeting schedule. If we selected the up to 300 participants, which is what we actually increased to during the time of COVID, that would be $2,000 a year per user, and then a total of $4,000. And if Assistant Manager Anderson has any other comments he'd like to make, if not, we can take direction from the committee.
No other comments to kind of augment what you'd already covered, Manager Ewald, but one benefit that I could just see is that our recordings are kept in our O365 accounts and don't have to be downloaded anyplace. So there's a little bit of some efficiency there, but I did do a little bit of research earlier with our IT project manager and found out that our G3 licenses, not that our attendance could get this large, but hey, maybe our current license allows up to 1,000 attendees in a Teams meeting. So that's the only difference that I could say.
And so, as I mentioned, the library has a Zoom. Is there any reason we couldn't share
Thank you for that. They actually are under McFliss or the Milwaukee County Federated Library System. So I imagine they already have a partnership with other library accounts. They don't share our O365 through North Shore.
They have Zoom. They have a Zoom line item on their budget.
Right, they have to pay for it through, I imagine they're probably a partner, and I can verify. But since we use O365 through the North Shore Collaborative or our contract that we have with Bayside IT, and the library, although in Village Center, their network is the Milwaukee County Federated Library System. So
So they're
in
not
order
using
for,
Microsoft.
sorry, go ahead.
So they're not using Microsoft Office 365.
They do use it, but again, they're on a separate, I guess they have different licenses through McFliss.
Mhm.
So anytime they say, look at department head files that we do have on Teams, they're actually granted guest access to even get into those.
Okay.
So when we pay for Office 365 through that other governmental administration line item, it does not include the any individual licenses for purposes of the library. The library on its own has a consortium of which they receive IT from through the Milwaukee County Federated Library System.
Okay, thank you. So I'd be in favor of going to Zoom Pro for $300. And I apologize for my inability to get onto Teams tonight. I've heard complaints from other members of the community. It's just too clunky. I think, it's an important thing to be able to reach the community easily. Especially when we are not meeting in person. Any feedback from Trustee Kudo or Trustee Arndorfer?
I mean, I prefer Zoom. I think it's just much easier to use.
I honestly don't have a strong opinion either way. I mean, I'm fine with sticking with Teams, but happy to explore looking at Zoom. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. So that's two in favor. Could we put that in the budget, please, for the next round?
Will do.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 6, there was just some questions that were posed regarding the expenditure restraint program and the impact of Act 12. And so I just wanted to we don't need to go through this now, but I provided some explanation within the scope of the meeting memo to just provide some context in terms of how those funds are divided. This is something that I had inquired to the DOR about after we received notification of our payment because it was significantly less than it was in the prior year. So we've had a number of large municipalities in the state now elect to register and participate in the program. And as the memo outlines, there's a total pot of money for the entire state, and that those funds are divided out to those who are eligible for the program by the payment specifications that I listed out within the memo. So, and also provided you with a link to one of those articles just to provide some additional information. That concludes the
I did have a
budget.
question though. So going back through the percentage change in the tax levy for the last 10 years, last year it went up 4%. And so because the first item deals with subtracting 5 mils from the local property tax rate, because our rate went up so much last year, that would play a role also, would it not?
They're all factors. However, the largest factor that has moved and reduced a number of municipal fundings in the program this year has been the addition of new program users that are much larger in municipal size.
And so if they qualify, they would get a larger slice of the pie than we would.
Correct.
But so as someone sitting on a budget committee, what should I think about in terms of my local property tax rate increase when I try to maintain or increase my expenditure restraint grant? What should I know about what number makes that important to me? What difference does it make? You know what I'm saying? Did the Department of Revenue give any guidance to someone like us? Like, is there a tipping point for our percent change in our levy that puts us more in than out?
No,
Okay,
the largest driver that they had identified for purposes of this year and the decrease that we saw was because of the impact I stated.
okay, so that leaves me thinking there are no guardrails. I mean, 2%, 5%, 3%, you know what I'm saying?
Again, it's based upon a total pot of money within the state and how that's divided up based upon these factors in their formula to eligible participants. So we don't always control every piece of that formula.
But I would assume that keeping your property tax rate increase lower would affect your participation reward.
We don't increase beyond the amount we're allowed, and that's how we are able to apply for and become a recipient of those funds in the program.
Okay. All right, I did have, was there anything else, Manager Ewald or Director Johnson?
I have no other additional information. Thank you for providing the direction with regards to these items in the budget wrap-up memo, and we'll prepare that to provide to the board on the 16th.
I did have two more questions. One of them, were we taking out the 60,000 for the Vision 2025? I think I saw that was still on the
Based upon the recommendation at the meeting on October 2nd, or the direction that was the consensus of the group, it will be removed. Thank you for that follow-up question.
okay, and then I also had a question about the Capitol Drive pavement marking. So I know it was indicated that some pavement had been redone this year on Capitol Drive. In looking, I didn't see it. I must have, I don't know. I looked, I couldn't see any new pavement markings. But the pavement markings in the budget here, is that just lanes and crosswalks and nothing more dramatic by the school?
There was no pavement marking done this year. As we previously reported, crosswalks were remarked last year. The budget allocation for 2025 would include the marking of lane divider lines, bike lanes, and parking stalls.
I mean, 2024, right?
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for the correction.
Okay. All right, so I'm sorry. So we will get crosswalks also in 24 besides the lanes and the bike lanes?
Crosswalks were done last year. Crosswalks and stop bars were remarked last year.
I mean, they just don't look.
I agree.
Good at all. So were we going to go back to the vendor or?
I have been working on that. I am not very hopeful that much is going to come of that. We are having some side conversations with the help of our engineer Strand with WISDOT to confirm how we can utilize the specifications to create a continued dialogue with the vendor about replacement. But like I said, it's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, I guess that's my question then. If the Capitol Drive pavement markings don't include crosswalks, then I think that number's probably too low. If it only includes lanes, because like crosswalks, that's one of the most important things we're trying to improve about pedestrian safety on Capitol Drive. So I guess I think that we need to look at that again next week.
Well, they were marked in epoxy, and epoxy is supposed to last 3 years. We can move to paint, which would be remarked every year. The cost is similar. The reason we were looking to go with epoxy is that This is pretty significant traffic disruption when all these lines are remarked. And to be able to do it once every 3 years rather than once every year has some real benefits. Now, if we're not seeing the life of the epoxy at the 3 years that we anticipated, certainly that is a conversation to have again. But I would like the opportunity to continue working through this issue with the vendor, perhaps with WSDOT's assistance.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if we need to do that, it needs to be in the budget by next Monday. So.
Yeah,
that's-
I will not have an answer for you by Monday. To remark all the crosswalks and stop bars again would be a 6-figure, probably in the low 200,000s just to do those items in epoxy. So
From Morris to Oakland?
from the river to lake.
Well, I think that, we're talking about the urgency here is Morris to Oakland, so, or at least Morris to Bartlett. And that's what I'd be looking for in 2024. If nothing else can be done to redo the stripes for the lane markers and not do the crossings, we're not listening to the residents.
I just want to provide clarification in that the pavement markings have not been funded in the 2024 budget. So I just want to, I don't know if that was maybe I'm probably hearing it incorrectly, but I just wanted to kind of make that known. So if there's a number that comes back on the crosswalks, that would be a new number that then we'd look at in context of the capital budget.
Right, and then I guess, depend on who staff puts the number on it. So if Capitol Drive painting didn't make it in, who would put a number 1 in front of Capitol Drive crossing repainting? President McKay?
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the first paragraph of the memo where it says the recommended or the budget proposes a 0.95% tax levy increase, but the recommendation is to levy more at a 2%, which would allow room 130,000 for to absorb increased maintenance costs due to a longer replacement timeline. And I just wanted to communicate support for that based on the experience with the North Shore Fire Department Board and their replacement schedule and what they found in terms of the delay with ordering a vehicle and then bringing it on fleet. It has not only the increase of the vehicles, but then the delay in actually getting them and putting them into the fleet is significant. So number 1, I want to support building in increased maintenance budget because I think we will need it. And number 2, I want to commend staff for getting out in front of this in 2024 because it is going to impact us. So I just wanted to provide that information and perspective to the committee as it was based on North Shore Fire Department Board participation over the past 12 weeks.
Thank you for that. I guess my concern then is, part of this is probably we're still looking at the COVID hangover, and I wouldn't want to overreact. Obviously, it's definitely had a huge impact on the automobile market, the industry, production, distribution. So I guess if you want to, to me, you're talking 2 different things here. You're talking about increasing the capital budget to 2%, but then you're also talking about maintenance, which is different from the capital. So are you saying you want to do both? Because to me, maintenance means you're going to allow more for maintenance because you're not going to be getting those vehicles new like you used to do on the regular replacement schedule due to the industry situation currently, which we could work out of within a year or 2. We don't know. The other part is, do you increase the 2% so you can buy more new sooner? I guess I see those as 2 separate questions. any input from trustee Kudo or trustee Arndorfer or anyone else on the call? Or staff, maybe I'm misunderstanding this.
No, I think you summarized it well. Within the scope of the public works budget, we do have an increase in there for maintenance costs because that's what we're seeing. And we know based upon our numbers this year that we need to allocate more, from a total dollar perspective. The only thing that's probably missing from the conversation is that when you have a vehicle that's down, you can't deploy it in the field. So for public works, let's just say, for example, that means it's going to take longer to plow the village. For police, it may mean that you're only running 1 or 2 squads versus 3. And so it impacts the service expectations during those times.
And so for the meeting next Monday, do we have direction from the committee? Do we want to increase the capital funding? You're talking about Fund 400, is that correct?
Correct. From tonight's meeting, we have included 3 things. The 2 of the Milwaukee County Safe Streets for All, the demonstration grant, and then also the EAB tree removal for a total of $90,000. Funding about a 2% increase for the levy overall would equate to another $130,000 in funding based upon where we were. So you've ramped up $90,000 into that. So that's where we are at the conclusion of tonight based upon the direction of the group.
And so the 130,000 would be separate from the 90?
No.
It'd be included.
130,000 total pot. You've funded 90,000. You've funded an additional 90,000. So essentially,
could we get numbers from George for 90 and 130, and then we can make a decision next Monday?
Approximate, yes. It should also be noted that we're still, and this happens every budget year, we leave off at this time and we'll come to the board and we'll have some general consensus. And then we wait for the rest of the numbers to come in. For example, transportation aid, like there's going to be little tweaks based upon those finalized numbers. We work with projections up until this point, and then the budget would then come back to you at our regularly scheduled public hearing for the second meeting in November.
Okay, thank you. So any feedback from the trustees if we could get, so it was 0.095 before we started tonight. There was a recommendation to go to 2% on the capital, the 400 account. We came up with an extra 900. And so I would like to see the overall tax levy increase with the 90,000 versus the 130 requested. Any discussion, comments from committee members or the public? Other trustees, staff? Okay, I see none. Does staff have what they need then to prepare us for next Monday?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments or do I see a motion to adjourn, please?
Go Packers, move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Trustee Kudo moves to adjourn. Did I hear a second from trustee Arndorfer?
You did.
Yeah.
Thank you, staff, for all your work, and I adjourn the meeting at 7:47.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I apologize for my problems.